Thursday, December 20th. It's the Matt Sager Podcast. I'm back. Oof. That was a long, hard week I just went through. You heard me Friday going, oh, well, I think I'm going to be back Monday, and I'm pretty sure I'm okay. Yeah, and before that, I'd been complaining about face pain, and I thought that was all about this dental surgery I had. And look, I had a sinus infection, just hardcore sinus infection. It was quite bad. It had me sidelined all throughout the weekend. Got worse on Monday. Like my eye got swollen shut because the eye is just a little bit separated, just barely from your sinuses. So before long, I looked like the Toxic Avenger. And as you can hear, my voice is not yet all the way back, but I'm basically functional again. Enough that I can thankfully, so I really miss doing this, I can now go back to doing daily shows. You know, as we get closer to Christmas, my birthday, of course, New Year's Eve, etc. The thing that sucks about being sick, well, one of the many things, is that you can never predict it. So you plan on doing shows every day, and then you get sidelined and go, all right, well, not today, but almost definitely tomorrow, so let me put up a repeat. Oh, well, it's Monday. I'm not quite ready. I'm still really, really sick. Time for another repeat. And by Wednesday, last night, I didn't even air a rerun because I was like, all right, I need to return to the show. Number one, A, I miss it too much. And B, if I'm going to be sidelined and sick for an indefinite period, I'm not just going to throw up reruns every night. That's ridiculous. That's insulting to you, the audience. My pathological need to do a new show every day does not supersede my responsibility as a creator to give you new, fresh content every day. So next time I get sick, I'm probably going to just scrap the reruns and just say, sorry, folks, I'll be back when I'm back. But I honestly don't plan to get sick like this again anytime soon. This was a real challenge this past week. You know, the life of a working person means that your mind sort of tends to wander to this fantasy, this nebulous fantasy of, oh, if I could just have a day, a week, even just an hour to lie around doing nothing but watch Netflix. It's an enticing idea, but in practice, the only way you can end up that way is when you're really sick and none of that stuff is fun anyway, and you just feel weird and isolated and depressed. It's a shitty way to be. I'm very happy to be over it, to say nothing of the fact that, I mean, this was system-wide. It was a sinus infection, but it turns out your eye is connected to your sinus. Your jaw, some of that jaw pain I was complaining about is totally gone now, thank God. But yeah, this was rough. I don't recommend sinus infections. If anyone's asking, if there's a Yelp page for sinus infections, I would say try and avoid them. And even now, I hear my voice beginning to get back to what it's like. But I had to turn down work. I had to turn down auditions this week. And I don't think I could have worked today. I think you can hear me sort of straining to be my regular self. That's no good. That's not a good way to be. So I want to start putting together, with the year almost over and my birthday, New Year's, coming up, I want to put together my lists, the best and worst of 2018. And I'd really like your feedback for categories, as well as your votes once I get these categories up there. I'm thinking, let's see, top 10 movies. And yes, today I finally did see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And wow, this movie, it's not just a great Spider-Man movie. It's a great comic movie. It's a great superhero movie. It's probably going to make my top 10 list of my favorite movies of the year. It's really good. Set the bar very high for Aquaman, which hits theaters tomorrow, December 21st. But so I would, of course, want to include top 10 movies, probably top 10, I don't know, TV series or TV seasons. It'd be some kind of combination or hybrid of the two. And I guess from there we could have subcategories like best movie in this category, best comic movie, best drama, best comedy, best biopic for TV, best streaming service, best original streaming show, best streaming device, best iOS and best Android device, best streaming TV. It's the Apple TV, by the way. Having gotten one this year to replace my Amazon Fire TV, no offense, Amazon, but Apple TV just rocks. And of course, that's the only device you can use to watch Apple's upcoming shows on their streaming service, which is going to debut sometime in early to mid 2019, which we know for certain is going to have a new comedy show from Rob McElhenney and Charlie Day from It's Always Sunny. The two of them are going to executive produce, and I believe Mac is going to be a star. And it was just announced a couple days ago that they're going to have original Peanuts content as well. Charlie Brown, Snoopy, the whole thing. So that's really exciting. From there, I guess what? Best movies, best music. Truth is, I'm not a huge modern popular music guy, but I did love the Kendrick Lamar. Gosh, I think the album Damn is from last year, but I loved his Black Panther album, and that had to be this year. So from there, it should be pretty easy for me to come up with another 9 albums, have a really solid top 10 music list for 2018. Best books, best gadgets, best games, best gaming device. I would lean heavily in favor of the Nintendo Switch, but I don't know how much of that is just my particular idiosyncrasies. my own weird preference toward, it's not the best console when you compare it to, for instance, the PS4, like Spider-Man game. It becomes very apparent that the hardware is inferior. But in the things you can do with it, its versatility, I'm just in love with the thing. But Best Books is one that I'm very excited about. This was yet another year in which there was a fantastic Stephen King book. Then there were a bunch of political books that you might feel different about for, these are books that are unfortunately largely in this day and age, all that books do that are about politics, even just the most passionless, fact-driven narratives that are obviously designed to support a thesis that this president is bad, or the country's moving in a bad direction because of this, or this candidate failed because of that. Sadly, I think we're now so divided due to social media and the political climate in this country, and just years of becoming increasingly an echo chamber nation, that books about, for instance, how great Trump is are only going to appeal to people who really love Trump, which that's something I can really understand. I am not a fan. I don't like him as a person. The only interactions we ever had have been negative. As a president, I try to keep my feelings on this quiet for the most part because this is not a political podcast, and I'm terrified of people threatening me and coming after me. I mean, sadly, that does come with criticizing him, which is unique to his presidency and not a good thing. But similarly, even within the Democratic Party, there's this sort of internecine warfare. So any book about how Hillary Clinton's campaign had real failures to it are going to appeal to some Democrats a great deal, and others wouldn't even deign to open it up and look at it because it's heresy. Then there's, of course, the Comey book. The Comey book is unique in that it's written by a lifelong Republican. It sets out to sort of denounce Trump. And so there's all these different angles from which one could come at this book with interest and a willingness to accept Comey's thesis and the idea that he might be a uniquely suited narrator of what's going on in our world right now, having been there and having made these pivotal decisions to leak the info about Hillary, but not about Trump, to apparently take notes on Trump during a meeting with him. Like, you would think one party or one subset of the party or one group, liberals, conservatives, hardcore right-wingers, diehard left-wingers, would sort of all come together and go, wow, this is interesting and important. But anyone who has listened to an interview or watched or seen an interview with Comey, or even just cracked the book and read a few pages, knows that it's so self-serving that the stories turn on a dime constantly to just aggrandize himself and paint himself as the hero in every situation. Giuliani was his mentor and was his hero until they started making fun of him and calling him Lying Comey, and then the scales fell from his eyes. He was a lifelong Republican up until the publication of this book. But then they made a website called lioncomey.com. So now he's come to his senses, he hasn't embraced anything. This is just all about his ego. People with egos whose trajectory happens to follow your own political leanings are not anybody's hero. I would sadly lump Comey in the same category as Trump, in that whatever you think about the kind of job they did or are doing or are going to do, whatever you think about their guilt or innocence, however much you do or do not like them, it's important to understand that they're not driven, it seems to me. Comey clearly argues that this is not the case for him. Trump seems to really embrace this image of himself. But I think that what they really have in common is the most unfortunate trait of all, an inability to understand what it means to be a public servant, that you're there to serve the public. It's not about you. It's not about your ego. It's not about your reputation or your ability to make money after you've left office. Now, has that behavior in general been almost standard operating procedure through all of Washington, D.C., and every state senator and congressperson from both sides of the aisle for decades? Yes, absolutely. And yet, there was still this acknowledgement that these swearing-in services in which you pledge your fealty to the people of the United States and to the upholding of the Constitution above all, that at some point you are to be held accountable to that oath, no matter how many crimes you commit, no matter how much money you make on the side, no matter how many foundations you set up in your name, no matter how many business dealings you do while serving the public, that ultimately serving the public is above all. Trump and Comey are both of a new breed, that just everything begins and ends with them, with how it affects their ego, with how it affects their reputation. Does Comey handle himself more decorously? Is he more eloquent in stating his case? Am I more sympathetic to him? Yes, on all counts. But I think that he is nobody's friend but his own. I think that in a jam, you would really want to hope that he has the same goal that you do if you'd want him to get you out of a jam. Because Comey is all about Comey, just like Trump is all about Trump. That said, I did like his book. It obviously irked me many, many times, but it would be on my short list. Probably my favorite book is The Outsider by Stephen King, clearly. But I would say, like, if I do a top 10 fiction books, that will be where Stephen King goes. And for nonfiction, I know for sure, almost sure, that my number one book, the year's not over yet. I am an avid reader and anything could change, but probably, and I really recommend this book to you very highly. I've spoken about it on this podcast before. Bad Blood by the Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou, which is about Elizabeth Holmes and her company Theranos. It's an amazing story, full of drama, pathos, and all completely true, and really admirable journalism. Carreyrou is the reason that the story was broken in the first place, so it is only fitting that he would be the guy to write the definitive book. But I mean, so much was revealed. It was on the heels of that book that these criminal indictments against her and Theranos came through, because the facts were so damning. So yeah, that is a great book. And then I don't know. I would really like your ideas because this is all very preliminary thinking I'm doing here, that maybe we should do a worst of 2018 as well. Worst environmental disasters, worst books, worst TV, most disappointing, biggest bummers, probably the most depressing entertainment business stories. That would almost certainly be the sudden cancellation of Marvel's Netflix shows, or certainly of Daredevil. Luke Cage was sad. Iron Fist, I don't think anybody really cared. Although maybe. It's certainly a story that has yet to really reveal itself, that Netflix itself, not Marvel and not Disney as was originally reported, Netflix pulled the plug on a show that was their number 4 most popular show, without explanation or warning, taking by surprise the entire cast and crew, writing staff, executive producer and showrunner, and of course the star, the titular Daredevil / Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox. They've all gone on record as saying, yeah, this was Netflix. They called us in out of the blue. We're shocked. We were getting ready to plot, script, produce season 4, and then rug just got yanked out from under us. No explanation, just handed our walking papers. That really sucked, and that would certainly make a worst of list. And then there were so many things this year that were just so great, in terms of entertainment at least. Like, there would have to be a list to do justice to how great a game Spider-Man for PS4 is. And similarly, to acknowledge the shocking gaming events, really recent ones in particular. I'm thinking the release of Fallout 76. I never got around to covering that on this show. By the time I played it, sort of the news had been through what a disaster it was. But that was, if you're a gamer, you know that Fallout just really shat the bed this year in a profound way. A way in which they could never recover from, potentially. They really hurt their own brand. As did Blizzard and Diablo, who had this BlizzCon convention out in Anaheim, California, who, people flew out there and bought tickets for the event, certain that they were going to hear something about Diablo 4 or an expansion pack for Diablo 3, and found out instead that what they were getting was a freemium iPhone game. And then when the booze came, oh man, I'll just have to repost the audio for that as we get closer to the new year. Suffice it to say, Blizzard managed to make things even worse for themselves by answering questions about, I think one guy said, is there any chance that we can at least play this shitty game on our computers? And he didn't use the word shitty. He just said, can we play the game on our computers? And the moderators, the guys from Blizzard, were like, what? You don't have a cell phone? It was just as tone deaf and dumb and dopey a self-inflicted wound as possible. And of course, the saddest events of the year, this too, sadly, could be split up among many categories and subcategories, but there certainly should be a category this year to allow for saddest moment, at least when it comes to entertainment, pop culture, people who are loved for the work they've done in that arena. For the death of Stan Lee. That really helped just cement this as one of the worst years for me. And then, I don't know, I might get a little bit meta and do favorite episode of this podcast, like a top 10 list for you to vote from. Again, what I really want is your feedback on all this stuff. I don't think I'm ready to ask you or to poll you just yet for certainly not anything to do with this show. Because having been off the air this entire week and coming into it this week all hoarse and just barely finishing off with 2 shows, I think I want to let a few days go by, do a hard reset on the Matt Sager podcast before I ask you to judge me. Because I get that I have not had a stellar week, and for that I'm really sorry, but I appreciate your patience. So happy to be healthy, and the first thing I did after getting out of bed was go see Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and my God, if you haven't seen it yet, go see it. But the second thing I did was the moment I got home, I recorded this podcast. I couldn't wait to get back on the air, and I missed you folks terribly. If you missed me even a third as much, I'm incredibly flattered. So, with that, my penultimate show of the week. Again, I'm very sorry to be delivering it this late, but feel free to get in touch with the Matt Sager podcast. You can email matt@mattsager.com, call 646-535-4788. Can also get me on social media. On Twitter, it's @MattSager. Instagram, I'm Real Matt Sager, and on Facebook, it's The Matt Sager. Also, for my voiceover page there, wow. Keep in mind that my voice is normally not like this. I am coming out of a serious infection. But that page is facebook.com/MattSagerVO. And of course, this podcast has a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/MattSagerPodcast. As for the rest, my voiceover reels, contact info, more archived back episodes of this podcast, articles, blog posts, and more, head on over to MattSagerVoiceover.com and check out the links in the description for tonight's podcast episode for links to my merch store from my very good friends at WeHaveMerch.com, in addition to my Patreon. Have a great night.